welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into the fascinating world of chess, a game that's not just ancient, but surprisingly vibrant and, well, really relevant in our modern world. You might think you know the board, the pieces, the moves, but get ready. We're hoping you'll see it from a whole new angle today. I mean, just look at the numbers. There was a survey back in 2012 found a staggering 605 million people still played regularly. And yeah, okay, the industry itself, maybe around $190 million, seems kind of small compared to, video gaming's billions or even other board games. But for a game that's over 1,000 years old, its staying power is just. It's truly remarkable. And what's even more striking is its recent comeback. Like millions have either started playing or dusted off their old boards. You remember The Queen's Gambit on Netflix back in 2020? Huge cultural moment. Suddenly chess was cool again. And then just last year, 2023, that chess.com bought mittens. Total viral sensation, brought in a whole new wave of players. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore these surprising threads connecting chess to, well, everything. Culture, history, strategy, even cutting-edge tech, all based on the sources you shared with us. We're going to journey from its kind of mysterious origins, trace how it evolved, the rules, the playing styles, even how the pieces changed shape right up to now, where it's basically a dynamic esport.
Yeah, what's truly captivating here is how chess isn't static at all. Its development is just so deeply intertwined with human ingenuity and shifts in society. It's like a living mirror, reflecting our history, our conflicts, even how we think about complex problems.
Okay, so to really get it, we need to go way back to the roots, which are, as you said, a bit mysterious. What do we actually know about where it started?
Well, there are these great legends. One points to China around 200 BC. A commander named Hung Qin supposedly invented an elephant game. But interestingly, modern researchers aren't totally sure if that's a direct ancestor of our chess or maybe more related to Chinese chess, Yonki. It's a bit fuzzy.
Okay, so maybe China, maybe not. What else?
Then there's this really captivating legend from India. It involves a wise minister inventing chess to teach his tyrannical king a lesson, to show him that everyone in the kingdom, even the pawns, were valuable.
I think I know this one. The reward story?
Exactly. The king loves the game, offers any reward. The minister asks for just 1 grain of wheat or rice, depending on the telling, on the first square. Then double it for the second square, double that for the third, and so on across the whole board.
And the king not getting basic math.
Or rather, not grasping exponential growth. Agrees. And of course, it bankrupts the kingdom pretty quickly. A powerful lesson.
Wow. Talk about a checkmate delivered off the board. So, legends aside, what do the researchers say? You mentioned India.
Right. Modern researchers like Harold J. Murray, this guy was incredibly dedicated, a British educator, spent 13 years on it.
13 years?
Yeah, even learned Arabic to read old manuscripts. His book, A History of Chess, is like 900 pages long. Chess historian Daniel O'Sullivan said it's so compendious that it may never be supplanted. Just totally definitive.
And he traced it back to
6th century India. That's where the consensus lands now. The game there was called Chaturanga. It means the 4 parts.
The 4 parts.
Yeah.
Like an army.
Precisely. It referred to the 4 units of an ancient Indian army. You had foot soldiers, elephants, chariots, and cavalry.
Which became our pawns, bishops, rooks, and knights.
That's the lineage, yes. And Chaturanga is seen as the earliest true chess because each piece had its own unique way of moving, and crucially, everything depended on the fate of the king. It was played on an 8x8 board, the Ashtapada board, but it wasn't checkered yet. That came later.
Okay, so 6th century India,
Yeah.
Chaturanga. How did it spread from there?
It traveled to Persia, probably through trade and cultural exchange. There it became known as Chaturang.
Chaturang.
Then, after the Arab conquest in the 7th century, the name shifted again to Shatranj. And the Persians, or perhaps the Arabs playing Shatranj, made some really key contributions.
Like what? Things we still use.
Absolutely fundamental things. They introduced the concepts of Shah, meaning king, but used to announce an attack on the king.
Check.
Right, check. And Shahmat.
Checkmate. Shahmat. The king is dead or helpless.
Exactly. The king is helpless or ambushed. That's where checkmate comes from. They also set the rule that you can't move your king into check or leave it in check. Still a core rule today.
Wow. And didn't the pieces also change around this time? Become more abstract?
Yes, that's a fascinating cultural point. Our sources suggest this abstraction came from interpretations of a verse in the Quran. It warned against idols, and this was taken by many to mean avoiding any true-to-life images, like soldiers or animals.
So they use symbolic shapes instead.
Right. abstract shapes, which, kind of paradoxically, might have helped the game spread even wider.
How so?
Because the abstract forms weren't tied to any specific culture's imagery, they became universal symbols for the piece's functions.
That makes sense. Left cultural baggage. But you mentioned it also caused issues later.
It did. That same interpretation has led to chess being banned in some Muslim regions, even as recently as the 1990s, due to concerns about it being potentially distracting or even linked to gambling, which also had prohibitions.
Right, okay. So after the Arab world embraced Shatranj, where did it go next? It spread like wildfire, didn't it, across North Africa?
Reaching Moorish Spain by the 10th century, it also went east to the Byzantine Empire.
And north. To Russia.
Yes, via trade routes. In Russia, they called it shakhmati, which literally means checkmates. Shows how central that concept was.
And there's that story about the Caliph Harun al-Rashid.
Yeah, the caliph in Baghdad, supposedly an avid player himself. Legend says he gifted a chess set to Charlemagne around 802 AD. Whether that specific event happened or not, it shows the game had reached the highest levels of power in different empires.
So it starts as this Indian war game, travel through Persia and the Arab world, picking up key rules in a new look.
Which really leads to a big question, doesn't it? How did this game, born from military simulation for elites, transform? How did it become this universal game played by millions, surviving centuries of change?
Exactly. And that brings us to Europe. Because once chess got established there, especially after, say, 1000 AD, and you have figures like William the Conqueror reportedly bringing it to England, that's when it really starts morphing into the game we play today.
Right. In the European Middle Ages, chess became a big deal. It was associated with nobility, with high culture. Knights were even expected to know how to play.
Really? Like part of knightly skills?
Apparently so. There's a text from the early 1100s, Disciplina Clericalis, that lists it as one of the 7 skills a good knight should possess.
Wow, okay.
And books about chess started popping up everywhere. You had instruction manuals like one called De Sacis from 1180. You had books using chess as a moral allegory like the Book of the Customs of Men. And collections of chess problems became popular too. King Alfonso X of Castile even included rules in his Book of Games in 1283.
So it was really embedding itself in the culture. And did the pieces change again in Europe?
They did. Europe brought back representative pieces, but because they were often based on those abstract Muslim designs, they ended up looking quite different from the original Indian ones. It was like a game of telephone with piece design.
Give me an example.
Okay, the elephant. In India, it was an elephant. The abstract Muslim piece had this little notch. Europeans saw that notch and thought, what?
A bishop's hat. A mitre.
Exactly. So in many places, it became the bishop. But in France, they saw the same shape and thought it looked like a jester's cap, so they called it le fou, the fool.
That's wild.
And in Mongolia, it somehow became a camel. Same starting point, totally different interpretations.
What about the rook, that castle piece?
That comes from the Persian word ruk, meaning chariot. The early European versions were all over the place, birds, horse heads, sometimes even elephants carrying towers. It wasn't until the 16th century that it kind of settled down into being called a castle or tower.
And the pawn. Still the humble foot soldier.
Pretty much, yeah. That one stayed fairly consistent.
And Europe also gave us the checkered board, right? The classic black and white squares.
Yes, the alternating light and dark squares became standard around the 13th century. Makes visualizing diagonal moves much easier.
But the biggest change in Europe, that it had to be the queen, didn't
Oh,
it?
absolutely. The greatest change, as some historians call it. Originally, the piece next to the king, the advisor or vizier, was super weak. Moved only 1 square diagonally.
Pretty useless then.
Kinda, yeah. Around 1300, it got a slight upgrade, could move 2 squares diagonally, maybe jump. But the massive power boost, that happened relatively quickly, between about 1475 and 1500, mostly in Spain.
And why then? Why this sudden superpowered queen?
Well, historian Marilyn Yellem makes a compelling case. She argues it was influenced by the real-world rise of powerful female rulers at the time. Think Eleanor of Aquitaine, Blanche of Castile, and especially Isabel I of Spain.
Ah, Queen Isabella.
Right. Yalom suggests their prominence, combined with the growing cultural influence of the Virgin Mary and the idealization of women in courtly love traditions, created a context where a powerful queen piece just made sense.
That's fascinating. Social history shaping game rules.
It really is. And there's even a late 15th century poem called Scache d'Amour, or Chess of Love, that already uses the new queen rules. The piece went from weakest but one to the most powerful piece on the board almost overnight.
And they even called the new game Queen's Chess.
Yep. Queen's chess, or sometimes, by those who weren't fans of the change, Mad Woman's chess. Bit misogynistic, perhaps?
Sounds about right for the time. What other big rule changes happened in Europe?
Two other huge ones fundamentally changed the game's speed and style. First, the pawn got the ability to move 2 squares forward on its first move only.
Okay, that speeds things up.
It does, but it created a problem. A pawn could potentially zoom past an enemy pawn on an adjacent file without being challenged, so they invented the en passant capture rule.
Right, the in-passing capture. If it moves 2 squares and lands beside your pawn, you can nab it diagonally as if it only moved 1. It's a weird one.
It is unique, yeah. A direct consequence of the 2-square pawn move. The other big change involved the king. It gained the ability to make a special jump move once per game.
Castling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Evolved into castling, the only move where you move 2 pieces at once. The king sidesteps 2 squares towards a rook, and the rook hops over the king to the adjacent square.
A great defensive move. Get the king safe, bring the rook out.
Precisely.
Hmm.
And one historian, Henry Davidson, suggests castling developed specifically because the king needed better protection after the queen and bishop became so powerful and threatening.
Makes sense. All these changes, powerful queen, faster pawns, castling must have made the game much quicker, more aggressive.
Usually so. Compared to those slow, grinding games of shatranj or early medieval chess that could last for days, this new Queen's chess was dynamic, tactical, much faster.
But not everyone was thrilled, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned controversies. Gambling, religion.
Yeah, chess wasn't always seen as purely intellectual. People definitely wagered on games, which brought it into conflict with religious authorities who frowned on gambling.
So, bans.
There were attempts. King Louis IX of France tried to ban it in 1254. Various church figures, like an Archbishop of Canterbury, threatened excommunication. A bishop guide banned it for clergy.
But did it stick?
Not really. There was pushback. Famously, a bishop of Florence defended chess, arguing it was different. It was a game of skill, not luck or chance like dice games, so it shouldn't fall under gambling bans. And that argument largely won out over time.
Okay, so the game is faster, the rules are mostly set, it survived religious objections.
Yeah.
How did people start actually studying it, getting good? Did the printing press play a role?
Oh, massively. Gutenberg's invention was huge for chess. Think about it. Suddenly, knowledge could be standardized and spread widely.
So chess books.
Exactly. William Caxton, one of the first English printers, his second book ever printed in English was a translation of a French book about chess.
No way, that early.
Yep. This explosion of books meant people could study openings, analyze games, learn strategies. It helped create professional players and really boosted the popularity of composing and solving chess problems as an intellectual challenge.
And this led to different styles of play emerging. I've heard of the Romantic era. What was that about?
The Romantics, roughly late 18th century up to the 1880s. This era was all about attack, attack, attack. Daring sacrifices, quick checkmates, tactical brilliance. Winning beautifully was almost as important as winning itself.
Swashbuckling chess. Any famous names?
Well, looking back, Gino Greco, an Italian player in the early 17th century, is seen as a precursor. He played these incredibly aggressive games, loving openings like the Italian game and King's Gambit, sacrificing pieces left and right for king attacks, way ahead of his time. But the real icon of the Romantic era was Paul Morphy, an American player in the mid-1800s. His games are legendary.
Like the opera game.
The classic. Played in an opera box in Paris, it's the epitome of Romantic chess. Rapid development, piece sacrifices everywhere, constant threats culminating in a beautiful checkmate, just pure attacking flair.
Sounds exciting. So when did formal tournaments start becoming a thing?
The very first recorded international tournament was actually way back in 1575 in El Escorial, Spain, hosted by King Philip II. But modern competitive chess really started to pick up steam in the 19th century. Those 1834 matches between La Bourdonnais of France and MacDonald of Ireland were famous, a real marathon series.
But didn't those games take forever?
Oh, yeah, that was a huge problem. At the big London tournament in 1851, there were no time limits. Players could just sit there and sit there.
Hours for one move.
Absolutely. One player famously took 2 hours and 20 minutes for a single move. It was becoming unworkable for tournaments.
They needed a clock.
Exactly. Chess clocks were introduced around 1861, first using sandglasses, then mechanical clocks. This brought in time controls. And the idea of flag fall, if your time runs out, you lose. Boom. A whole new way to lose, besides checkmate or resigning.
Added a whole layer of pressure.
Right.
What about games that still went on too long, even with clocks? Like
Yeah.
overnight.
That led to the sealed move. If a game had to be adjourned, the player whose turn it was would write their next move down secretly, seal it in an envelope, and it would only be opened when play resumed, kept things fair.
Clever. All these developments, standardized rules, books, clocks, tournaments, it feels like it's building towards something.
It was. The first official World Chess Championship, held in 1886 between Wilhelm Steinitz and Johannes Zukertort. Steinitz won, becoming the first undisputed world champion.
And Steinitz represented a shift away from that romantic style, didn't he, towards something more scientific.
He did. Steinitz, along with others like Siegbert Tarrasch, ushered in the scientific or classical school of thought. They weren't against tactics, but they emphasized positional principles. Things like controlling the center of the board, usually with pawns, building up small advantages, understanding pawn structures, valuing the bishop pair, accumulating advantages slowly rather than going for broke with risky attacks.
A more methodical approach.
Yes. But then almost immediately, this classical approach was challenged by the hypermoderns in the early 20th century. Guys like Aaron Nimzowitsch and Richard Reddy.
Hypermodern. What did they do differently?
They had this radical idea. Instead of occupying the center with pawns early on, maybe it's better to control the center from a distance with pieces. Let your opponent put their pawns in the center and then attack those pawns.
So lure them in and then counterpunch.
Kind of, yeah. It was a very different philosophy about central control and piece activity. A really fascinating debate between these schools of thought.
And where did someone like Capablanca fit in? José Raúl Capablanca.
Capablanca, the third world champion. He was seen as the pinnacle of that clear positional style, but almost effortless. He had this amazing intuition.
Not hypermodern, then.
Not really. He was known for avoiding messy tactical complications if he could. His genius was in simplifying positions, spotting tiny advantages, and then converting them flawlessly in the endgame. His endgame technique was considered maybe the greatest ever up to that point. Just incredibly smooth.
Smooth, I like that. And after Capablanca, we get the rise of the Soviet chess machine.
Pretty much, yeah. The Soviet era dominated world chess from about 1927 right through to 2006, with only a couple of brief gaps. Soviet players held the world championship title almost continuously.
Why were they so dominant? Was it state support?
That was a huge part of it. Chess was actively promoted by the state. Top players were professionals. They were state-supported athletes. They had coaches, trainers, funding. It transformed chess from a hobby into a serious profession. You had figures like Mikhail Botvinnik, who was world champion on and off for years, but also ran this incredibly influential chess school.
Training the next generation.
Exactly. His methods produced or influenced generations of champions. And what's interesting is they didn't all play the same style. You had Botvinnik's own logical, scientific approach. You had the tactical wizard Mikhail Tal, the incredible defender Tigran Petrosian, Boris Spassky.
Yep.
This depth and diversity eventually set the stage for the challenge from the American, Bobby Fischer.
Right. Fischer breaking the Soviet dominance. But that's almost another story. What really changed the game, again, fundamentally, was technology, wasn't it? Computers.
Oh, completely. The absolute watershed moment was 1997. IBM's supercomputer, Deep Blue, defeating the reigning world champion Garry Kasparov in a match.
I remember that. It felt huge, like humanity lost.
It was huge. It marked the point where computers definitively surpassed the best human players. Computer analysis had been around since the 70s, but Deep Blue is different. Now, computer analysis is just essential. For professionals, it's a critical part of preparation, and it's available to everyone now, engines that are vastly stronger than any human.
We went from engines like Ribka and Stockfish.
Right, which were based mainly on brute force calculation and sophisticated evaluation functions, to a new generation starting around 2017 with AlphaZero from DeepMind.
Neural networks. Like AI learning.
Exactly. AlphaZero taught itself chess just by playing against itself, using neural networks. And it developed strategies that looked incredibly creative, sometimes very non-human. Its successors like Leela Chess Zero, and even the traditional engines like Stockfish, which now incorporate neural networks and NUEs, they understand chess on a whole different level.
And this tech revolution coincided with the rise of online chess, right?
Perfectly. The Internet Chess Club started way back in '92, but then you got freemium sites like Chess.com launching in 2007, Lichess in 2010. Suddenly, millions of people could play anyone, anywhere, anytime. For free, often.
A massive boom in players.
Huge. And this information age of chess, with databases of millions of games and powerful engines available to all, has had a strange effect on top-level classical chess.
How so?
Well, opening theory has been analyzed to death. It's often said that many main lines are nearly solved for black, meaning Black can achieve equality fairly easily if they know the theory.
So it's harder to get an advantage out of the opening.
Much harder, especially between top players who know all the theory. This has pushed the focus towards faster time controls, rapid blitz of even bullet chess, where intuition and quick calculation under pressure are paramount.
Making your opponent uncomfortable rather than just seeking a theoretical edge.
Exactly. It's also why chess is now a legitimate esport. You have grandmasters like Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura streaming their games on platforms like Twitch, reaching huge audiences.
Alongside dedicated chess content creators like Levy Rosman, Gotham Chess, or Agadmeter.
Right. They have massive followings, and you see constant online tournaments, major events like the recent Karen's Cup won by Carissa Yip, Magnus winning Norway Chess again, those high-profile blitz matches with Hans Niemann. The scene is incredibly vibrant and very much digital now.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We've covered this incredible history, the evolution, the tech. But for someone listening, maybe they're inspired, they want to play or they want to get better. How does it actually work? What are the rules and how do you improve? Our sources got into this too.
Right, so the basics. The official rules are set by FIDE, the World Chess Federation. You've got the 8x8 checkered board. Each player starts with 16 pieces. 1 king, 1 queen, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, 2 knights, and 8 pawns.
And they all move differently. King one square any direction.
Queen, the powerhouse, any number of squares, horizontally, vertically, diagonally.
Rook straight lines. Bishops diagonal lines.
Knights in that L shape, the only piece that jumps over others.
And pawns.
Yeah.
The tricky ones.
Yeah.
Forward 1 or 2 on the first move. Capture diagonally.
Exactly. Plus those special moves. Castling, that king-rook swap for safety. En passant, that weird pawn capture. And pawn promotion, if a pawn makes it all the way to the other side of the board, the 8th rank, it can become any other piece, usually a queen.
The ultimate goal being checkmate. King's attacked, nowhere legal to move, game over.
That's the main way to win. And to talk about games, we use algebraic notation. It's like coordinates for the board.
Rows number 1 to 8, columns lettered A through H. So E4 is a specific square.
Precisely. And F3 means a knight moves to square F3. BX-C6 means a bishop captures on C6. Check is plus, checkmate is hashtag. Castling is 0-0 or 0-0-0. It lets anyone replay a game accurately.
And games don't always end in checkmate, right? There are draws.
Lots of ways to draw. Stalemate is a common one. It's your turn, you're not in check, but you have no legal moves. It's a draw.
Dead position too, like king versus king.
Right. If neither player can possibly checkmate the other, it's a draw. Players can just agree to a draw. Or if the same position repeats 3 times. Or if 50 moves go by without a pawn move, or a capture the 50-move rule.
And in competitive play, there are strict rules. Time controls we mentioned.
Yep. Classical, rapid, blitz, bullet, correspondence, all with different time limits, sometimes with increments adding a few seconds per move. And the crucial touch move rule.
Ah yes, you touch it, you move it. If you touch an opponent's piece, you have to capture it if legal. No take-backsies.
Definitely no take-backsies. And generally, good sportsmanship is expected. No outside help, phones off in the playing hall, shake hands before and after.
Okay, rules covered. Now the big one. Strategy versus tactics. What's the difference? It seems key.
It's absolutely fundamental. Strategy is your long-term plan. It's about the big picture. Is my king safe? How's my pawn structure? Do I control more space? Are my pieces active and well-placed? It's about setting up favorable conditions. Tactics, on the other hand, are immediate forcing sequences, short combinations of moves, usually involving checks, captures, or threats, aiming for a quick gain like winning material or delivering checkmate right now.
I love that Sun Tzu quote our sources mentioned. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat.
Perfect summary, isn't it? You need both. Good strategy creates opportunities for tactics. Good tactics exploit those opportunities.
So strategically, what are the main things to think about?
Well, material count is basic, knowing the relative value of the pieces. Queen 9, rook 5, bishop knight 3, pawn 1 roughly. But just counting points isn't enough. You need piece activity. Are your pieces doing useful things? Controlling key squares. Pawn structure is huge, avoiding weak pawns like isolated ones or backward ones. Controlling space on the board is important. And always, always king safety. Sometimes you might even sacrifice material for a strong opaque on the king, like the famous Greek gift sacrifice.
And tactically, what are those immediate shots? Forks, pins?
Yeah, those are the building blocks. A fork is one piece attacking 2 enemy pieces at once. A pin is attacking a piece that can't move because it would expose a more valuable piece behind it. A skewer is the opposite, attacking a valuable piece that, when it moves, exposes a less valuable one behind it. There are tons more. Discovering attacks, undermining defenders, overloading pieces, interference, decoys. Recognizing these patterns is vital.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how do you actually take all this and get better? Like practical steps for someone listening.
All right, the million-dollar question. Our sources were pretty consistent on this. Number one, overwhelmingly. Tactics, tactics, tactics.
Just drill them.
Constantly. Solve puzzles every day. 10 a day is a great start. It builds pattern recognition faster than almost anything else. You start seeing these tactical motifs in your own games.
What about openings? Do beginners need to memorize lines?
Honestly, no, not really. It's a common trap. Beginners should focus on opening principles. Develop your pieces quickly towards the center, control central squares, and get your king castle to safety, usually early on. Stick to simple, solid openings. For white, maybe the Italian game, the Scotch game, the Queen's Gambit. For black, responding to e4 with e5, or playing the Queen's Gambit declined against e4. Avoid super sharp, theory-heavy lines until you're much stronger. Principles over memorization.
Okay, good advice. Middle game.
Always try to have a plan. Even a simple one is better than just reacting move to move. Look for imbalances in the position, weaknesses in their pawn structure, better minor pieces, space advantage, and try to place your pieces actively to exploit those weaknesses.
And end games. People tend to neglect those, don't they?
They really do, but endgames are crucial. You need to study basic endgame positions and themes. Things like opposition, using your king to block the opponent's king. Zugzwang, that situation where having to move actually hurts you, understanding past pawns. There are common endgame mistakes to avoid too. Keeping your king passive, misjudging pawn races, misplacing your rooks. Knowing basic checkmates, like king and queen versus king, is essential.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What else? Analyzing your own games.
Absolutely critical. You learn most from your losses. After every game, win, lose, or draw, go back through it. Try to understand why you made the moves you did, especially the mistakes. Where did things go wrong? What was your thinking process?
And look at games by stronger players, too.
Definitely. Study games by titled players. Don't just click through the moves. Try to guess their moves, understand their plans, compare their thinking to yours.
But what about just plugging your game into an engine? Doesn't that tell you the mistakes?
It tells you what the mistakes were, yes. But it often doesn't tell you why a human would make that mistake or what the better human plan was. Engines think differently. So the advice is crucial. Analyze your game yourself first. Try to figure things out on your own. Then use the engine to check your analysis, spot things you missed, or calculate complex lines. Don't let the engine become a crutch that prevents you from thinking for yourself.
Right. Understand the why, not just the what. Last thing is study plan.
Yeah, having some structure helps. One suggestion was something like, spend maybe 50% of your chess time actually playing games. Longer time controls are better for learning. Then maybe 20% analyzing those games. 15% on tactics puzzles. 10% studying strategy, reading books, watching videos. And 5% specifically on endgames. Finding good chess books on each topic is also invaluable.
That sounds like a solid, balanced approach.
Yeah.
Wow, what a journey. From ancient Indian war simulations through Persian courts, European transformations, romantic attacks, scientific defenses, Soviet dominance, AI revolution, right up to online blitz and global esports. Chess is just incredible. It really is a testament to how humans love strategy, solving problems, and, well, competing.
It really is, and it makes you think about that quote from Emmanuel Lasker, another world champion. He said, "Chess is a struggle against error." It raises a question, doesn't it? If chess is all about battling your own mistakes, learning from them, constantly trying to improve, how does embracing that process in a game translate? How can it inform how we approach challenges, mistakes, and learning in the rest of our lives?
That's a great point. That relentless refinement of theory in chess, driven by new players, new ideas, now new tech, it really does mirror how we have to keep learning and adapting in pretty much any field today, doesn't it? Always pushing the boundaries of understanding. So the next time you sit down at a chessboard, or maybe even when you're just facing a tricky decision, think about it. Remember those centuries of human thought poured into this game, the breakthroughs, the blunders, the sheer resilience of it all. It's quite something. What's the one thing that stands out most to you from our deep dive today?